This is Age of Change from Lafayette International High School.
Welcome to our Agent of Change, a podcast from Lafayette International High School, inspiring stories and innovative ideas. Straight ahead.
Hello and welcome to the Agents of Change podcast. We're your hosts, Lubaba,
Shaila.
There's Joinab.
And we've been learning about environmental justice as senior at Lafayette International High School in Buffalo. And now we're gonna know about environmental justice. And here is Shaila. Shaila, can you tell us about environmental justice?
Okay, the environmental justice is a fair treatment of people, all race, income and culture, with respect of the development, and all people have right to be a protect from environmental pollution and to live in and enjoy a clean and healthful environment.
New York has a long history of environmental injustice, like Love Canal and Tanawandalco. On today's episode, we will focusing on Love Canal and the Buffalo-based organization, New York Sea Grant. Here is Lubaba. Lubaba is telling us about history of Love Canal.
Imagine living in a quiet neighborhood where families thrive and children play, only to discover your community is built on a ticking time bomb. This is the story of Love Canal, a chilling environmental disaster from the late 1970s. In Niagara Falls, New York, the Hooker Chemical Company had buried tons of toxic waste thinking it was safely contained. But over time, these dangerous chemicals began to seep into the soil and water. Residents started experiencing severe health problems, children born with birth defects, adults developing cancers, and a range of mysterious illness that couldn't be explained. The situation became so dire that the government had to step in, declaring a federal emergency and evacuating hundreds of families from their homes. Love Canal became a ghost town almost overnight, a stark reminder of the hidden dangers lurking beneath our feet. Disaster also sparked a movement. It led to the creation of the Superfund program, designed to clean up the nation's most hazardous waste sites. The Love Canal story is more than a tale of tragedy. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of environmental vigilance and the need to protect our communities from hidden dangers.
Thank you, Lubaba, for telling us the history of Love Canal.
Now we are going to talk about Buffalo-based environmental justice of organization. Our organization name is New York Sea Grant. So, Joinab, can you tell us the mission of the organization?
The mission of organization is bringing science to the schools through high-quality research, outreach, and extension. There is some value. Hey, Lubaba, can you tell us about the value?
Oh, the values are excellence, integrity, responsiveness, education, stewardship, sustainable development, collaboration, and partnership.
Now we'll hear from Nate, who is a Great Lake Literacy Specialist.
So my name is Nate Dragg. I work for New York Sea Grant and happy to be here. It was founded in 1971. So we've been a program for about 50 years. And there's a Sea Grant program in any state in the United States that has an ocean or Great Lakes coast. So here in New York, we have water along the Great Lakes in Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and then on the ocean coast near New York City and Long Island. So we've been doing our work for about 50 years, and it involves research, education, and outreach. So we study the water in New York, and we talk to people about it, and we teach people about it. And that's what I do. I'm on the education side, so I work with teachers and students and people in the general community to talk about our water and how to protect it. And I got involved in this work when I was a kid. I grew up on Lake Erie in Buffalo, and I spent my childhood there, and it was something that I was very connected to, and it's our drinking water, so I became passionate about keeping it clean and safe. So I went to college to study science and learn about the Great Lakes, to pass laws to protect them, and in order to do that, we need to teach people about them. So that's how I got into education. So teaching people how to keep the lakes safe, keep them clean, and kind of clean up some of the mess that we've made in the past. Done a lot of work. So me specifically, one of the big things that I'm proud of, last summer I took 15 teachers out on a research vessel, a boat that does scientific research on the Great Lakes, to teach them how we study the Great Lakes and how what changes they're seeing out there. So the teachers, they got to live on this boat with scientists for an entire week, and the hope is they take this experience back to their students and tell them all about the Great Lakes. So it could be any teacher that works with middle school or high school, not just in New York, but all around the Great Lakes. We even had a teacher that teaches fourth grade students, so they got to be scientists for a week, and then they get to come back and talk to their kids about this really cool experience and talk to them about how important the lakes are. So imagine if one of your teachers got to live on a boat for a week, testing the water to see if it's clean, looking at the little animals that live in there, spending the whole week on the ship. So that was really exciting, and working with the teachers this school year, a lot of them have really connected with their students and their local waterways. So we have a teacher from that teaches in North Tonawanda, not far from here, and she's been able to take her students to the rivers and lakes around their school and really give them a good connection. A lot of these students had never been to the water before and didn't know about all the different types of fish and animals that live there, and even where they get their drinking water. So it helps connect the students to where their water comes from and helps teach them how to keep it clean. Environmental justice impacts our waterways in a few ways. So if you think to the river or creek that's closest to where we are here, so the Niagara River is a couple blocks that way, and then there's also Skajackwada Creek. So those are two main rivers in our watershed, or where the water flows. Unfortunately, near both of those rivers and creeks, there's a big highway. So you have the 190 by the Niagara River, and then the Skajackwada, the 198, is a highway pretty much right on top of that creek. So it doesn't have a good impact on water when you have thousands of cars driving next to a river, by a river, over a river, because you have, like I was talking about earlier, all that water, when it hits those hard surfaces, it can run right into the water. So when rain hits the highway, it can run into the water, and that can bring trash or oil or gas or other chemicals, and it doesn't keep the water clean. So people that live in these communities, the rivers that they would go to are feeling the impact from that type of pollution. If we lived in another community where you didn't have a highway right next to a river, it would be a different situation. So it's not very just that, depending on where you live, your river can either be very polluted because it's near a highway or clean because it's not. So that's one thing that we'd want to work on for people that live around here and want to go to the river. The water should be clean, and we should be able to fish there or even go in a kayak or a boat and not worry about getting sick. So that's one way that I think there's an environmental injustice where not everyone has access to that water in a safe way. For schools and communities, I think a lot of it related to water has to do with our drinking water. And some schools and older homes have older piping in them. So the pipes that bring the water into the schools and homes can have lead in them, which can have a lot of health impacts on people. So that's something that in older schools and older communities, you have these older pipes, whereas in new schools or new communities, you don't have those older pipes. So I think it's important that we find out where those pipes are and invest the money to replace those pipes. So everyone, when you go to get a drink of water, you know that it's safe and clean. But that's a big problem in a lot of cities, not just Buffalo. Other older cities have those challenges. One big issue that I think we have in Buffalo and a lot of cities that are as old as Buffalo is anytime it rains, like when it rained yesterday, There's so much water that comes down from the rain, it goes into the drains, which connect to the pipes that connect to our sewers. So our bathrooms, when we wash our clothes, when we do our laundry, that all goes into one pipe. And when it rains, there's so much water in there, it overflows right into the river. So that water isn't clean, so anything that we flush down the toilet, anything that's on the street, like trash or oil from cars, all goes into the rivers. And that's the rivers that we eventually drink from, too. And it would be the rivers that if we wanted to go fishing or go swimming, we would be touching that water. So if you don't have the ability to drive really far to go to a beach where there aren't sewage overflows, it's not very fair that the water that we have to live near ends up getting all that sewage, so things we flush down the toilet dumped right into it. So that type of system is called a combined sewer system because the two pipes combine to one. So that would be a big thing because if you didn't live in this water. So I think that's a big issue that unfortunately people that live in the city and older communities like that have to deal with. So one thing that people can do, we can't really stop flushing the toilet. We need to flush the toilet. That's pretty important. We need to do our laundry. We need to take showers. We need to clean our dishes. But we can keep some of the water when it rains from going into the storm drains, the sewer grates really fast. We can slow that down, and you can plant gardens that hold on to water. You can plant trees. Trees do a really great job holding onto water in the ground when it rains. They need a lot of water so they can grow big. Just having more plants and less hard surface like roads and streets, that makes the water run away really fast. If we have more plants and more soil, that water can soak in. We'd have to plant a lot of trees, but I hear you've planted some trees, or you're going to plant trees. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So a lot of the challenges that we face is really making people aware of what the issues are and how they can take actions themselves. So an issue like plastic pollution, so pieces of trash or litter that we find on the street, that could be a plastic bottle or a plastic bag. A lot of people may see that it doesn't look nice, or when you walk down the street it doesn't look pretty, and that's definitely true. We don't want that in our communities as much as possible, but it's a big challenge because we all use these items. They are cheap and they're convenient, so that means it's easy to use and they're durable. They last really long, but what happens sometimes is if we don't have a way to collect them or to dispose of them properly, they can end up as trash.
Mr. Nate brings up some important issues of our time. So what can be done?
From New York Sea Grant, we work on, like I've said, education and research. So I think if there was an investment in researching some of these environmental justice issues and putting funding behind that research, so having the money so people can study this project. So there's been a lot of research on the Great Lakes and the water that's done beeping. That's far out in the lakes, which is very important because there's a lot of fish and animals that live far out in the lakes, but we all live on shore, and there's a lot of challenges that we're facing here. So on the air that we breathe in Buffalo, the water that we drink, it's not everyone has access to the clean water and clean air as they should. So if we invested in researching those specific communities, working with the people in those communities to ask them what the challenges are. Is their air clean to breathe? Is their water safe to drink? And if they don't know, then we can work with them to say, okay, let's set up a research project and we can study this together.
Continuing that idea, Mr. Nate has great advice for our community.
I would say getting to know around the environment, getting to know your local ecosystem. So the rivers, the lakes, the parks, knowing the plants and animals and the people that live in those areas is really, I think, the first step. Because then when you really get to know it, you start to observe the conditions, how things are, whether they're in good condition or bad condition. And then if you notice something, you start to ask questions. Always ask a lot of questions and ask, why can't we get to the water to have a picnic?
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining us on this important conversation about environmental justice and water.
It's been eye-opening, discussing the impact of water pollution on our communities.
And inspiring to hear about programs like Mr. Nate Drake's teaching students about water science and stewardship on Lake Ontario.
You know that I was really moved by Mr. Drake's story. He was so passionate about cleaning water that he went to college to learn science.
That's amazing. So, how can we all get involved in this work?
Well, we can start by reducing our own water waste and supporting organizations like the New York Sea Grant. Or you can go to their website, which is seagrant.sunnysb.edu.
Also advocate for policies that prioritize water quality and communities' health.
And don't forget to check out the New York Sea Grant website for more resources on water quality and environmental stewardship.
Absolutely. Every small action counts, and together we can make a big difference.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. And this podcast was produced by Tabassum,
Lubaba,
Join
Shamira.
And Shaila.
And especially thank you to our teachers, Miss Miola, Mr. Johnson, and Miss Harbeck.